Yes, do send me stuff on that address or go to the website. Okay, so bit of interesting survey here from Institute of Advanced Motorists about 20 mph. They got 44% of drivers agreeing that 30 should be 20, which is a lot more than when they were surveyed in 7 years ago. And interestingly, just over half would like the road outside their home to have a 20-mile-an-hour limit. A bit like what we've seen with traffic calming in the past, that motorists are thinking, oh, well, don't like traffic calming, but if we're going to have it, I'd like some outside where I live. That's my view. Okay, here's a graphic from Jeremy Vine. He photoshopped it with putting that girl in there. This is about one of these vehicles found in Kensington, Chelsea, and various jokes about how it's a form of active travel because you have to get onto a ladder to get into it. He does a lot of good graphics, and I'm referring to some a bit later. Yes, big news. Our very special, our own Ruth Mayorkas makes it into 100 Women in Cycling. If you look at Ruth, I know in her background, she's got the Women in Cycling type flyers, banner type things behind her. And also Sarah Berry, who's presented here, was included. Sylvia Gautreau, not yet. So we should make a point of nominating her next year. Okay, who said on the 15th of July, bike lanes are massively popular in this country, the UK? Who said that? The Prime Minister in his Levelling Up speech. Yeah, a bit of an update from what Roger Geffen was talking about last week about the policing and bill and trying to get stuff in on hit and run and dangerous driving. It appears from questions answered that the door is being kept open, although since I put that up, Roger's been saying that in fact, there was something of a noise, which was a bit positive, but also another response from Baroness Veer was less optimistic. So that's still carrying on, and Roger Geffen is doing an enormous amount of work on that. Okay, here's the report, Decarbonising Transport. Now, you really do have to read it. You have to read certainly all the stuff on walking and cycling. Look at the footnotes. Now, here's this thing which Brian, who's done the counting, 110 mentions of cycling, 94 mentions of walking, 14 of child, and fewer mentions of electric vehicles and active travel, but it could just be Brian's optimism. That's the cover of it. You should read it. Here's an article by Carlton Reid, which is kind of on the whole pessimistic. Saying it makes lots of good noises, but we're still cracking on with the road building program. So it's sort of a bit greenwashy in that sense. I've extracted some bits here. Increasing cycling and walking, we will deliver the Prime Minister's bold vision for cycling and walking with the aim that half of all journeys in towns and cities will be cycle or walk by 2030. Now that's re-emphasizing what was put in Gear Change and in one comment since then by Grant Shapps. I also say we will deliver a world-class cycling and walking network in England by 2040. Now that's kind of interesting because 2040 looks a bit like kicking it down the road to me. Also, if we're going to get half of all journeys in towns and cities by active travel, we're going to need the world-class network by then, surely. That's my take. You come to your own conclusions. Here's another graphic. public transport and active travel will be the natural first choice for our daily activities. Also, this paragraph, we will use our cars differently and less often, okay, with new technology, but no, less often. And here is some targets for 2025, double cycling as the estimated, doubling the estimated total number of cycle stages. Increase walking to 300 stages, so you've got a target for walking and a small increase in the percentage of children that usually walk to school. That's a bit disappointing, but some targets specified there. That's interesting. Now here's figure 4. This figure above presents a range for the potential increase in active travel stages in England due to future spending above the 2 billion already committed. So, you know, this is us going from where we are now very slowly here, and then look at the ranges that go onwards and onwards up to the 2050 date for the net zero target. And Xavier Bryce of Sustrans has commented that this shows the need for more investment to be specified, coming up to something like 8 billion rather than the 2 billion that we've had specified for the current future 5 years. Okay, now my view is that there's no real plan, there's no mention of the massive road buildings plan, and nor the need to not expand airports and flying. However, on the positive side, do look at this article by Transport Action Network, who've been fighting in the courts. And they say that the Department of Transport has backed down in the face of our second legal challenge. Buried in the DfT's transport decarbonisation plan was a concession to review the national policy statement for national networks. Yeah. So they claim a bit of a victory there. However, they've since tweeted, unfortunately, the DfT have not committed to reviewing the £27 billion RAS2 roads programme, but they have committed to reviewing their outdated roads policy, which was the subject of our other judicial review. So, you know, a bit sort of more and less. Leo Murray had a very good thread here. I'm going to read out all these comments quite quickly because, or some of them, where he talks about very disappointed repudiation of the clear expert consensus around the need for demand management of both road and air transport, which you need, as well as ambitious technology improvements. So he says it's actually fundamental to the status of the government's commitment to meeting its targets to do this. The clear implication of rejecting demand management, even as a backstop to tech improvements if they fail to materialise, is that the fallback in the case of such failure will instead be carbon offsetting, which is not a credible approach. So he's saying that the refusal to commit to demand management, which could be road pricing, reducing highway capacity, etc., as a backup to tech substitution, is actually a signal that the commitment to meet the climate target only goes as far as the tech can take us. But all the evidence is that tech will not suffice to get us over the line. So he's saying they're not really committed. Okay, now, very good article by Roger Geffen on the Cycling UK blog. You must read this, very important, short article, everybody read it. And he says, evidence-based targets and funding allocations are the critical missing ingredients from the decarbonisation plan. If he really wants us to, we will use our cars less, he needs to start by spelling out how much less and by when, and then allocate funding accordingly. Despite the positives, I'm going to talk about them in the next slide, my overall impression of the TDP is that ministers still want to assure the public that they can carry on driving when the evidence clearly shows that this simply isn't compatible with the urgency of the climate crisis. Missed opportunity. The good points that Roger refers to are as follows. The commitment to deliver the world-class cycling and walking network in England by 2040, although I think that's a bit like kicking it down the road. Addressing cycle safety concerns, some good stuff on cycle rail, talking about other bikes than standard bikes, and there's a faint hint of some traffic reduction targets. A bit like what I referred to before about we will use our cars less. Integration of cycling into local transport planning, increasing vehicle occupancy and car sharing, and reforming transport appraisal and revising the NNPCN that I referred to before from TAN. Okay, that's the decarbonisation bit. I look forward to your comments at the end of the news update. This is them again doing Transport Action Network. There was another little report on The Guardian on where they claim there was some sort of gain or victory, although it's perhaps blown up a bit in this Guardian article. On the Andy Cox call for action, there is something very important that's happened this week, and that is this. The recommendations for national consistency to traffic crime third-party video reporting from the National Police Chiefs Council, and that includes liaison with people who've submitted footage after they've done it. Do read through this. It's important. It's a push for getting third-party reporting to be known about. A lot more needs to be done in terms of staffing police and getting the media involved, but it shows some recommendations on how it should be done from the National Police Chiefs Council. Very important. Here's this equality page. Landor are doing Agenda on the Agenda series here. Don't forget the Women's Festival of Cycling is now ongoing. Do get in there. And this is the photo from last week's Killical Mass. New stuff to read. Yeah, here's the Decarbonising Transport you must read. Don't forget the 5 flaws on failing laws from Cycling UK. New today, there is a webinar being put on by, 5 webinars by Active Travel Academy at Westminster University. Do take a look at that on their website. The Guardian suggesting that the decarbonisation plan was too much hot air. Also coming up, which you'll read about in the future, Simeon Bamford, who some of you may remember from being the guy behind Cycle Training UK, has got this petition being formulated at the moment to make car makers responsible for the harm reduction of their cars. There's a link there for you if you want to find out a bit more about it. New things, here's something, it's actually an old article, but it's about decarbonisation and transport from people like Professor Hannibal and others. Article by Naranti Highwayman on speed differential. It's consultation for those of you in Wales on the proposed reduction of speed limit to 20 mile an hour default. So do get stuck into that consultation. That's your reading. Okay, on the ground in the UK, the guy in Colchester has written a thing about the supposed Dutch roundabout in Colchester and issues about that. It's a small amount about Dutch roundabouts, which we've discussed previously. I'm not saying I'm endorsing what he says, but you might want to read that article. And the Manchester Chorlton Cycleway is going ahead. Very positive consultation responses, so that was good. Here in London, Yeah, mention again the Healthy Streets scorecard that I referred to last week. Do take a look at it. It is, you may be surprised by some of the results, but look at how it was all put together, and it is interesting the way they've tried to get a score out. Okay, in Lambeth, there's been more vandalism of the Tulsall LTN, an article by Peter Walker on how the council is going to try and step up security to stop that happening. That's what the vandals did, and locals got in there and did a bit of repairing, putting, covering up the paint. They couldn't do it on the signs, obviously. But they made it look a bit nicer afterwards. So well done them. That's from Ealing, the Olive Road low traffic neighbourhood, document from the council saying that nitrogen dioxide levels went down after the LTN was put in. Yeah, Danny Williams has been saying this, reported from today, there's a 4+ year waiting list for bike hanger, bike parking if you live in Wandsworth. 10,000 people are on the waiting list in Southwark, 8,000 Camden, 6,000 Haringey, 5,000 in Lambeth. Big demand for putting your bike in a bike hanger. That really is a big area, residential parking, been saying that for ages. The mayor in Lewisham says they've rolled out 26 school streets with another 19 to come in the autumn. Just re-mentioned from last week the TfL press release on the success of the cycleway in Chiswick. Hammersmith and Fulham, the bridge is open to pedestrians and cyclists, and there is a new campaign to keep Hammersmith Bridge car free. Go to hammersmithbridge.org.uk or their Twitter account. Also in Hammersmith and Fulham, nice thread and very easy to watch video from Jeremy Vine about the state of the temporary cycle lanes, and they've been in, they got all kind of knocked about. There may be some change to that. They may be refurbished soon and rearranged and done nicely. And in Southwark, new data reveals the huge success of Dulwich traffic measures, cycling up 74%, traffic, motor traffic they mean, down 16%. And finally, your cartoon from Dave Walker, saying that don't buy a really cheap new bike from the internet or a non-specialist shop. I think he's right. Doesn't mean that if someone turns up on a ride or some cycle training with a wonky bike that you laugh at them or shame them, but just that you advise people buying bikes to get ones which are roadworthy and function. So I don't know if anybody wants to say anything, probably mainly about transport decarbonisation plan. Anybody?
Thanks, Bob. Yeah, I'm sure there'll be a few comments on that. I can see the hands coming up. I'll go to Ruth because I already heard Dave, and I'll come to you next, Dave. Ruth?
Thanks. Somebody, and I can't remember who it was, did point out a line in the decarbonisation plan that on one level it would need lots of investment and that's the only way it would work, and on another, if there wasn't enough funding, it wouldn't. And I can't, whoever it was, put it on Twitter and highlighted it with a pen. If anyone can remember who might have done that, it would be really great, because it was very useful pointing that element out, because it is about funding, frankly. Thank you.
Yeah, well, I've been kind of summarising it to various people who ask me all week, and I've been saying, well, it's just kicked it all over to the energy sector, saying it'll all be electric by then, so don't worry. But like all the climate specialists I've spoken to over the years have been, and I thought everybody knew this, the kind of cumulative total, and that we're spent up in the next 7 years. So like having it all be like a completely carbon neutral in 20 years down the line might be 13 years too late. There's some quick maths that I've been doing for people. Dave, come on in.
Okay, well, I'm surprised Bob didn't mention Hammersmith Bridge.
I did.
You did?
Oh,
did.
I'm surprised you missed it.
I must have been Mutt and Jeff. It's interesting that there's nothing done on the deck plates yet, because I think Ruth mentioned in something that the deck plates have been badly patched up and repaired. I think that's going to need to be something that's done fairly quickly if they're going to do some refurbishment on it. And a comment on Simeon's petition. I was responsible for having the only NCAP test done on a commercial vehicle back in 1997. All this safe stuff we've done for car collisions, we've had nothing for trucks. And most people die when they're hit by an HGV because they go under the wheels from the front. So I think if we're looking at responsibility for designers to design hazard-free trucks and buses, perhaps we should be getting them designed so that people don't go under the wheels from the front, because that's where they die, going under the front. And the incident in Southport this week where the boy got hit by the bus lane, 2.6 metres wide, includes the cycle lane. So when you see the picture, the centre line of the road is coming out from the middle of the bus. And the tyre mark on the front of the bus was where he struck the cyclist. The guy's very lucky. The bike stopped him going under the wheels. So if Edward's listening in, I might have a chat about taking a few measurements at Southport. It's a lousy piece of design, and people should be shot for that.
Well, let's not get ahead of ourselves. We have to look at, see what, there are accidents that happen in the system, and it sounds like there might be some kind of cycle street kind of affair there. So I'd want to know a little bit more before we start shooting fellow engineers, please. I'm going to at this stage invite, if anybody's got any kind of perspectives that they want to share on a decarbonisation plan. It was a big moment. We've been waiting. It was it was a little bit late, but it kind of got there. But is it too late? Does anybody, Simon? I was kind of goading Simon to try and come in there, so that's good. Simon, come on in.
So I was on a webinar, I think it was last week, where is it Alex Peters, but the Welsh minister went on just before Hugh Merriman, who's the Transport Select chair, and it was the morning. So it was the morning of the Welsh announcement. So Alex just went, yeah, we're just stopping all road building to reassess because of climate. Over to you, Hugh. Mic drop, gone. And Hugh Merriman just went like that, and it was like, yeah, this is the government is trying to have its cake and eat it on this one very clearly. It's creating a load of announcements in the run up to COP26 to portray itself as a positive climate action kind of responsible government, but it isn't until it does something about that 27 billion. It isn't. So that's my take on all that. Really is, we've clearly got a bunch of people in the DfT and in government who are now pushing really, really hard on cycling and walking. That's a brilliant thing. But until they push on car reduction, it's all noise. Yeah,
no, that's an interesting one. Yeah, I'm been really impressed with the Welsh government as well. Just in general, and definitely when it comes to the transport, I think they're making lots of the right noises. I'm hoping and we've got to shout out that the active travel guidance is out, the new version, and it's looking quite tasty. And I was thinking one of these weeks I'd go through some of their junction options and do a technical review. Depends if anybody could stomach that, but I'd very much like to have a go at that one. I'll bring in Kate. Kate, want to come in?
Yeah, I was just going to say on the decarbonisation, there's a bit of a sort of forked tongue, not very surprisingly. So, for example, it talks about reducing or stabilising traffic numbers, more active travel, more public transport, but without any real reference for travel demand, except suggesting local authorities might bring it in on their own. And we know that it's sort of commercial suicide for an individual town to do it on their own, because the fear is everyone will go to the adjacent town. So Cambridge is the authority I know that got closest to serious travel demand possible proposals and back down. So I think that's, for me, that's the big gap, is in the high level stuff Rob's talked about in the past about new schemes creating more traffic. I did hear a very senior director in Highways England last week who said, unfortunately my camera wasn't on so he couldn't see my jaw drop, but he said, I don't believe that increasing road spaces induces traffic.
What?
But I think most people think that increasing road space does induce traffic. It certainly reassigns traffic, and I think we pretty much know it causes it. So I think that's the biggest gap for me, is that big,
certainly,
you know, it's tricky.
Yeah, certainly most people that can count agree with that. But I will say, like, there is a role for the city region mayors here to kind of fill the gap. And I think that kind of regional approach where you've got 4 or 5 like different cities that would compete.
I think region can work, can't it?
I like to think, albeit I'm always overly positive, that it's set up for them to step in and take the flack or take the praise. All good. I'll go to Robert Campbell now.
Yeah, I'd kind of like to follow up on that and say that the regional cities or regional mayors and cities need to start getting their act together to kind of reinforce what's going on. The Newcastle City Council has been talking about net zero in 2030. The only way that's going to happen is actually promoting active travel of one form or another and improving the public transport infrastructure. Andy Burnham was talking about on the podcast Ways to Change the World the other week, talking about taking control of public transport in the same way that London can, and actually start demanding and managing the fares for local transport, which outside of London is just not possible. And what I wonder is, how can we as campaigners and interested parties try to reinforce whatever advocates that we've got within local authorities to start pushing this in a sense that supports them doing it. There's a local councillor in Newcastle who has been fighting his colleagues effectively about trying to introduce better cycling infrastructure in one way or another. So I wrote to him the other day and said, we want to support you. From a commercial standpoint, this makes sense for me. How can we help you? I've not got an answer yet, but I think that's one of the things, is to create and support demand for active travel and better infrastructure, because it's more than just lycra-clad cyclists. It's everyday travel for everybody, and that's the key thing that I think we need to keep pushing harder and harder. And support for not only the active travel measures that local authorities and the region mayors are doing, but also on the back of the clean air zone. We've postponed the clean air zone in Newcastle and North Tyneside till this time next year, which seems a bit of a cop-out to me. But support for these people when you find them.
Yeah, well, indeed, yeah, to keep voting in that. You had a really good perspective, that, Bob. But yeah, Bob, did you want to come back?
Yeah, just a quickie that there was a heading in the current local transport today that in fact the Welsh have excluded one major road stream from the review of roads, but I don't know how important that is. Just raising it as an issue.
Yeah, no, yeah, I'd heard about that as well. I think it might be that people are already committed to things, but I'm not sure the exact details of that one. But they're still in my good camp at the moment, the Welsh government.
Yeah.
And Stephen Edwards.
Hello, I just wanted to make a little announcement that it might be a bit late, but we in Extinction Rebellion, it's a bit late, but we've formed finally a Roads Rebellion group, and we at the moment we're trying to assist TAN amongst others and help out with regional groups, local groups, and all the road schemes. You know, there's well, you probably know, there's 27 billion at the moment. It's going to go up to another 30 billion, another 30 billion after that. Is adding up to 90 by 2035. So we've got a series of webinars coming up, and I'll put it in the chat. We've got Lisa Hopkinson, we've got Tan, so Becca and Chris from them, and Larch Maxey and Casper Hughes talking about non-violent direct action. So it's going to be to help local groups with that, direct action, and also there's possibilities for armchairs. A little bit of a late announcement there. Thanks.
Well, thanks, Stephen. Yeah, I was like as a highway engineer, I want to build roads and I want a massive £27 billion budget to do it. but they might look a little bit more cycle and people friendly than the options we have on the table. So I'm with you there. Robin, did you want to come in?
Yeah, thanks. So I managed to swap a couple of extra notes with Roger Geffen after I thought his analysis was excellent, and I agreed with all of it. So one of my questions was, okay, so if the government wants to build a world-class network, how much is that going to cost? And his answer was, well, basically that ought to be relatively easy to work out, but no, they haven't done it, but really ought to. And then the other one was, I was looking for evidence of road pricing, and it was tucked away in a grey box down on page 100 and something, just a slight tiny hint of it. So yeah, I mean, it wasn't really great emphasis, but it is in there because I mean, we're going to need that. Otherwise, we're going to get millions of if we all know the story, we'll get millions of EVs, even more than we've got fossil fuel vehicles running around. We don't want that. Those are my 2 comments.
Yeah, no, it's interesting on the how much will it cost. It's an interesting one, that because yeah, do occasionally get to speak to the government, and it's more like, well, how much could you spend? Could you actually deliver on this one? Given that there's a massive hoo-ha about dropping the planter in the middle of the street, if we were to seriously deliver like 50% trips and get stuff rolling and actually make mode shift the reality, how much could we actually spend? And I'm often saying this to people, and it seems like really vulgar when I do it, but money's never really been the problem. It's getting people to do it.
He did make that point.
I do make that a lot, and people go, "Oh, what a flip guy like that." And I go, oh, you know, just saying, there are big pots there, and we've got big issues, and if we can show that we can deliver, then we got. But it's very hard for the government to take it seriously, because they know, like the car industry, are absolute monsters, and they will absolutely deliver and spend huge amounts of money and get the targets. And you're like, so the money's going to the ones that are the biggest problem, saying sort it all out. We're going, actually, we've got a solution. Yeah, but nobody will let you do it. It's a real trap that the government kind of finds itself in.
Look what the tobacco industry did. Look what the sugar industry is doing to fight back against the taxes there. It's yeah, the car industry.
Yeah, really, all we could do is keep forming plans, start building it, and get that level of trust up. And I think like most of the UK is kind of engaged in delivering pretty solid stuff now. So I think the case is getting stronger and stronger. And I think there's enough slack in the decarbonisation plan for us to fill some of those voids and switch it over. We can make the case. Anyway, that's how I get out of bed in the morning. Simon, did you want to come back in? Oh, there was another point as well. We'll get to that in a minute. On,
yeah,
Simon.
and I can see other people with their hands up as well, but I'll jump in anyway. Just to say, money is a massive issue for starters. You know, we don't like, you know, there is much more happening in London. There's much more happening across England. There's much more happening across the UK. But I'm being told routinely that we're still not spending our budgets on cycling. Yeah. You know, it's still a struggle to get enough boroughs in London to do stuff that we use up the budget. Similar case across the whole of England. So the active travel units are desperately trying to find boroughs, councils, whoever, who will actually deliver, because there's so many still not delivering and failing to deliver that we can't spend the money. So until, you know, we can actually reliably bust our budgets, the chance of us getting a bigger budget isn't huge.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I'm gonna try, because one of my heroes is on the line tonight, who might give us a bit of a European perspective on this. Pascal, are you happy to come in and talk to us about money and how much we should spend over what period?
It's always about money, friends. Thank you so much for having me, because it is beer has always attracted me, although I don't drink beer, I drink wine, I'm European. But it is a good idea to be formally together and speak about good things. My main cycling work at the moment is within Civitas Handshake. That is a project where the cities of Amsterdam, Copenhagen, and Munich help 10 cities to become cycling capitals in Europe. And Manchester is one of them, still hanging on there, you know, as a last project, I guess. And there's a whole lot of things that we're doing there, but one of the things that is really very successful is the project of bikeonomics. And calculates the investment a city can do in cycling and how many years it will take before there is a return of investment. And that return is dramatically fast, like 2 or 3 years, you have it back. And I have suggested vigorously to Kensington and Chelsea to don't bullshit on that street over there, but calculate what it would bring in for the shopkeepers over there. Because there is this funny idea that cars make money and bicycles don't. Well, it is the other way around. Well, the other thing that I always want to sell to the likes of you is that you start with, say, £25 per person per year in a city and do that like for 20 odd years. And then within the first 5 years, you see massive results. For any politician, that would be dramatically good. But it will take a number of years, like you in London, for instance, have taken a lot of years to get somewhere where you are now. And other cities will have to take longer, maybe. But then it will be a bicycle culture. And it is all about money. And you have to spend it. And you have to convince politicians that they will flourish and they will gain votes if they do. And I would like to invite you, and I'll put it in the message board, to visit Handshake, a stunning project with great results that I can talk for the rest of the evening about. But I won't bore you with that. I'll do that the next time, maybe.
Yeah, we'd love to have you back and talk about Handshake. It's been a great project, and I've been kind of feeding in from the sides, but I've been working with Civitas for years. In fact, the first time we met Pascal, I believe, was on a development site in Malmo, and that was a Civitas thing many moons ago. What a job that was. Oh, right, okay. Well, I think they're historical hands that people have still got up. But if anybody did want to chip in, just say, or we'll move over to our first speaker, kind of everything. All good. All right. So actually, our only speaker, Wendy Hind, are you there? You know, apparently Wendy's going to talk to us about accessibility, and I'm told from emails that she's figured out the meaning of life, so might let us know that at some stage. Wouldn't that be nice? Wendy, it's all yours.
Yes, I'm here. Yeah, thank you very much for inviting me today. It's lovely to be here. 62, 63 people, that's not bad really for ideas with beers. I was thinking everybody might have a beer in their hand, but clearly not. So yes, I'll keep mine really short. I'll just do an introduction for now. Basically, I work for Oxford City Council for my sins and wear many hats. So I'm a tenant involvement officer, which means I try to get people on board to talk about various policies and procedures, which is really for the bread and butter stuff. Then I do document drafting and policy writing. And on top of that, I am also involved in accessibility and inclusion. And currently my accessibility and inclusion focus is across 3 key policies. It's the covered market in Oxford, it is the LTNs, it is the Broadmeadow, and also we're going to be looking at the Oxpen strategic work. On top of that, I'm also on the East Midlands Railway board for inclusion, and I am about to become a trustee of MAS. So my interests are wide, varied, and I'm a bit like a scattergun in terms of what I try and achieve. The reason I wanted to come today is that Oxford only gives me one view. And when I was speaking to Plymouth Council about the electric charging points, for example, I'm looking to get a much wider national view on how important accessibility is currently. So I've been listening to the conversations this evening, and accessibility and inclusion is a really difficult one, because if you push for cycling and you push for fewer cars, and you're pushing for decarbonisation. Spare a thought for those people like us who can't actually travel very far in terms of using bicycles or walking and or carbon-free modes of transport. And it looks like we are going to have to buy vehicles which are electric. That costs money as well, and we can't buy electric because we can't use the electric charging points at the moment. So what seems to happen is that the government decide on planning and strategy, and then a small minority of people within this country, i.e. the purple pound, we tend to get considered an afterthought. So we're always chasing our tails. I would like to be part of this group on a longer term basis, just so that inclusion and disability and accessibility are normalised as part of the conversation. And that is all I want to do. Thank you very much.
Yeah, and you're more than welcome, Wendy, and that's there's some really good points there, but you have to watch out for. And really, like, I think most of us want less cars on the road, so there's more space for those that need to do it. I'm a member of the Chartered Institute of Logistics and Transport, and I know the importance of freight and taxi colleagues and all these things that we kind of need to happen. But yeah, I've always maintained that if you're taking a private car when there is an alternative and you're fit and healthy enough to take an active travel one or get on the bus, then for me that's antisocial not to. But anyway, we'll see if that starts to happen. Anybody got any comments or welcome for Wendy? So we've got any hands up there? Yeah, we've got lots of like thumbs up and shakes, Wendy. So welcome to the team there. all good. All right, well, have we got any more hands? Oh yeah, okay. I can see John's hand up. John, come on in.
I just want to ask about that. Wendy, you just mentioned about the charge points. Is the issue can you just explain why charging is difficult? Is it the usual problem about trying to get cable into a house or something, or terrace properties?
No. If you look at charge points as they're currently designed, none of them are standardized and none of them are being checked by disability groups. Now, if you're in a wheelchair, you can't actually reach a lot of these charge points because they're up and they're behind bollards. And if they're behind bollards and they're up a curb, which a lot of them seem to be being put in those sort of areas, we can't access them. Now, I walk with 2 sticks. So if I want to currently charge my vehicle, the weight of the cable and the combined mechanism that you have to use, I would fall over because I haven't got the balance to use.
Yeah, that's really helpful. Thank you very much.
Car to charge the damn thing. Then likewise, you then got to get back off the step. Yeah. And it's little things, it's like lighting, or they tend to be put in car parks, but they're not put anywhere near the disabled car park base. So it's a whole multiplicity of things, or they'll be put with no lighting. So it's crazy. It's absolutely crazy. There are no help buttons on them. There's no braille on them. There are no options for this to be done automatically. And if you're a disabled driver, I really don't know why they haven't come to us to start with to say, what do we need? And yet they've got the Motability scheme. Did they not even ask Motability? I don't know. So from Plymouth, Oxford, Dundee, and all the councils in between, they're designing these things without actually realising that where they're putting them, is it possible? It can't be done.
Yeah, thank you. That's a comprehensive answer. Thank you.
Yeah, I think we're in desperate need for some solid design guidance on how to roll this stuff out there. I'm kind of waiting for it. Maybe I'll write myself if I'm getting there, but there's a big issue there for sure. So thanks for raising that one. Okay, who have I got next in the list?
I think that there was a question about that. I think one of the key things that would be really interesting, because there's been some Innovate grants and around developing charging points per se and trying to increase the or reduce the cost of installing charging points. In none of those discussions have I heard anything to do with accessibility issues. There's one or two companies based up here in Newcastle who are doing quite a bit of work around charging point. If you would like to send me some details, I will try and swap some details around to put people in contact together, because I think it suddenly struck me as you were talking just now. Yeah, there are all those problems, and I personally, as an engineer, quite honestly put, yeah, I hadn't thought about those kind of things properly. It would be really interesting to try and put that information together. So
actually, there's someone who has, so I'll bring in Brenda, because I think she's got some knowledge that I didn't know about. So Brenda, come on in.
There you go. Yeah. So am I unmuted? Yeah.
Yeah, you're good.
I just wanted to say there is detailed guidance, quite a few pages of it. I haven't looked at it in detail. I haven't had the time. I'm happy to circulate it. I think a lot of it is around heights and things. I haven't had a look at it in detail, but I think the points that Wendy was making about the weight of the cable and other issues, I think that would be really useful for the person who's written the guidance. So if you don't mind, I'd like to show you the guidance, email you the guidance, and then to connect you with the person who wrote it so that you can give feedback.
Absolutely, I would love that.
The pages and pages of guidance.
Okay, I could speak
on this. Yeah, so I think it's just written by experts without actually, I don't know how many disabled people were involved in writing that guidance. So I'll pass it over. If you have an email address, I'll pass it over to you. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, thanks. And I think very useful comments, the ones you make. I'm going to go back and read it now. It's there in my library to read. I haven't actually gone through it because I haven't been dealing with it much, but yeah, very interesting. Thanks, Wendy. Okay.
Brenda. Okay, Simon, bring you back in again.
Yeah, sorry to jump in repeatedly. There's a couple of points that came out. This one is the whole reason why Brian and I did the guide to talking to people about their streets, that's available on Urban Movement and LCC's pages is exactly this kind of area, and it really brings to mind, there's a great blog on the Strong Towns, the US site, called Most Public Engagement is Worse Than Useless. And it's very much about getting people to be the experts on the things they're the experts on, and engineers to be experts on things engineers are experts on. And this seems to me like that was just a beautiful bit of intelligence and information about something that, I as a non-wheelchair user would never consider and think about in that way. Just having someone who's lived experience immediately explains, what the problem is there. That was wonderful. I thought it was an amazing thing. And that's the second thing is I dream of a future where we can have a forum and a conversation between all the active travel organisations, all the disability access organisations, users, etc. I think Mike Barrett, TfL, is trying towards something like this as a Wheels for Wellbeing, but to work on this guidance, because so much of this area as well, there is a real issue with a lack of clarity as to who is impacted by what, where, when. And for me, that the Bishopsgate ruling, for instance, is a real case on this. Is we know that the number of disabled people who need to use a taxi to access Bishopsgate in that area in that way is very tiny, but the number of disabled people who are on the bus, which was risking a real situation where loads and loads of taxis who don't have disabled people in, that have city boys off to lunch or whatever in, would have completely brought the bus to standstill. And actually the bus is where most disabled people in London are travelling. So there are some real issues of how you not balance, but how you design to include everyone in a way that doesn't exclude some people that you're not quite, thinking about. I think is a really complex area that, we're certainly still looking at all the time. So bring it on, really.
Excellent. Thanks for that, Simon. I'll bring in Tim. I'll get to you all honest.
Hi, Wendy. That was great. Always good to meet another tenant involvement practitioner. Just to say, there's a very good website based around these things, and all of these are recorded. And a few weeks ago, we had a wonderful presentation from disabled activist hand cyclists who didn't use a hand cycle when there weren't low traffic neighbourhoods, but now could use it to get from Brockwell Park straight onto the ward at St Thomas's. And I recommend watching that one back. Someone on here will know the woman's name because she was brilliant, and she's a very, very senior person in the world of cycling. But yeah, welcome, and the more voices on here, the better.
Brilliant, thanks for that, Tim. Lovely comment. I'll go in the order of the hands now. Kate, did you come back in? Nope. All right. I go to
legacy hand. Sorry.
Yeah. Things happen. Ruth.
Hi, Wendy. Thanks for that. Very, very good. I'm a non-professional, just a campaigner. It's actually a question for you because you mentioned about disability cars. And 2 days ago, I passed a woman in a mobility scooter, which we don't see that much anymore with the cover on. And she was on the road and everything. And it shocked me because she was wearing a full scooter helmet, like the full thing to cover here. And I wondered if that's in case it falls over curves and everything. So I just wondered if, because you'd mentioned for going short distances within small towns, places, are there less mobility scooters being used than I remember in the 80s, when I do remember there being quite a lot of them? And is that because of funding, lack of safe space to use them?
I don't know. I'd love to know. I don't know the answer to that, but I will say my concern about scooters and wheelchairs at the moment is that the cycle lanes themselves may in fact be too narrow for a scooter that is road legal to be able to use. So it's something else that the cycle lanes are great in as much as, yeah, they're fantastic, but if somebody needs to use an electric scooter, where do they go? Because that's the thing that's cutting them out as well. And they're always going to be for short distances. They only do 8 miles at the most, you know, so you're talking about limited areas. Yeah, some do more than that, but I don't know the answers to why there are fewer. I would love to know about the road accidents and whether that had an impact, or whether the cars are going faster, or whether indeed LTNs are causing a problem as well, because you've got to go in and out of those bollards or whatever there is to get through to wherever you want to go. I don't think any real research, I don't know, has the research been done about it? Love to know the answer. Sorry. Shall we find out?
Yes, it just seems that because the advantage of them is you can go straight from street to shop. Whereas even if you're in a mobility car, you've still got to get from that car to the shop. And the advantage of the scooters is you can drive in, as it were, which is very enabling, I would have thought. And my experience of Holland is there are lots of them, and also the side-by-side cycling, you know, where people are in side-by-side bikes, where one's pedaling and the other might be limited pedaling. But thank you anyway.
Yeah, I certainly think the international perspective is actually one that we need to pursue as well. Sorry, Brian.
Oh no, that's fine. Yeah, it's all about welcoming you. Bob, do you want to come in?
Yeah, yes, I was going to say to Wendy that Brenda is a disability access consultant, so she's professional and architect and qualified and knows all the dimensions and all that. Another thing is that what we have already talked about on Ideas with Beers is the problems that cables going across the footway pose for people with visual impairment and other people with disabilities. So we have raised the issue, and stuff that comes up, I put on the diversity page of slides to do with various bits and pieces. So I hope you find that all interesting. Thanks very much.
Yeah, we did as well do a review of sorry. I know, I was just going to say we did do a review of like the low traffic neighbourhoods back a year or so ago, and had Isabel Clement come in and talk to us about making sure the bollards go in the right areas and we keep it fully accessible. So yeah, it's definitely one that needs revisiting, and often sometimes when we're rushing to do temporary stuff, you know, don't quite get all the details right. Dave, come and tell me about cable weights.
Yeah, I mean, basically, we're talking of roadside, be the trickle chargers, because a lot of people want the fast chargers to just plug in and get a 5-minute charge. And some of my other guys I deal with engineering-wise, you don't realise how much power that's going to drain. I mean, people don't realise you're putting all these chargers in. A fast charger can be up to 50 kilowatts, which is a 200 amp supply, which is at least twice the size of the supply you get in your home. That means large cables, and nobody ever grounded the 18th edition of the electrical installation regulations, because they're quite tight about having loose cables lying about, and you've got to have them fastened down, you've got to have them treated in certain ways. And I think Wendy might correct me somewhere. Has Oxford started introducing sort of slots in the footway where the cables go? Wendy? Has Wendy got me? Hello?
Yeah, she's still there.
Sort of slots. And I always quote section 28 of the Town Police Clauses in 1847, but Mark pointed out section 162 of the Highways Act 1980 about cables and such like across the footway. So we do have laws that can pick up on these things. Should they be enforced, and should we know what we can be enforcing? That's me.
Yes, that's really good info, Dave, and I'm sure Mark will add some more info to that one as well. Mark, did you want to come in?
Which Mark, me or
you?
Nancy?
Always you, Mark.
No, I think the section thing, the section act that Dave was referring to was actually not me, but I think it was the other Mark. But I will just
yes, sorry, you're the Mark.
But I'll just come in now because I wanted to raise one thing. Sorry, I missed the start, so I presume the discussion was about equality impact assessments and so on. I've just come from the Brighton Hove Transport Partnership, where we had a somewhat of a heated discussion with the Possibility People, which is the overarching disability group, Brighton Hove, and the chief exec there basically is of the opinion that every single active travel measure for walking and cycling is anti-disabled, and she won't be really shifted from this position. It makes some very difficult discussions in Brighton. And particularly where the issue I wanted to raise was, I sent Bob a link to it, and I'll put the link in the chat. There's a narrow underpass under the railway at Aldrington, a little station in Hove, where it had staggered barriers, which were very much deemed not Equality Act compliant. They were too tight to get a wheelchair through, or certainly a cargo bike or a disabled access bike or anything of this sort. They've just been removed, and the council said this was in light of its public sector equality duty, and it just did it. It removed them, and everyone's very happy, including the pedal peeps cycling without age who couldn't get their tri-shores through there. The local Conservatives are saying, you didn't do a risk assessment here, and it's actually dangerous because motorbikes coming through there, and we want the barriers put back, and we don't care that it breaches the Equality Act because of the risk of the motorbikes to everybody, which is higher, which trumps the Equality Act because it's a risk to everybody. Now, I know I can see Simon waving his hand. It's a load of nonsense, but I think there is a lot of myth and misunderstanding about the SED, Equality Act, amongst elected members in particular, but the public in general, about the legal requirements. And I think that's one of the things that we need to try and get better across to everybody, is what it actually means. For example, I've just seen on the chat, DDA compliant. DDA does not exist. It hasn't existed for 11 years. If we start using, this is a particular bête noire of mine, but if we use DDA in a conversation, it shows that we don't know what we're talking about, basically. It is referenced slightly in the Equality Act as a legacy, but it shows that we're at least 11 years out of date, anyone who mentions DDA. So we should make sure that we get that. And it's Equality Singular Act, not Equalities Act. I know that sounds petty, but we need to show that we know what we're talking about.
Yeah, quite right, Mark. Quite right. Yeah, no, I hear someone refer to DDA at least once a week in my life. Simon, come back in.
I just like, it's the Waltham Forest approach as ever. What they did. We had a whole series of complaints about a 20-meter long alleyway cut through in a low traffic neighborhood where supposedly cyclists and moped riders, delivery riders, were just running people down on an hourly basis. And all they did was they just stuck a camera car up for the day. So the council, when it came to the public inquiry, they just put up a camera car for a couple of days here and then and just said, yeah, we were there for 2 days. There was not even a near collision. Here's the numbers on how many cyclists were using it. Here's the numbers on how many pedestrians were using it. Here's the numbers on how many near collisions there were. 0. Done. If that barrier is out, just get someone to go down there with a camera and video for a day, you know, a council officer or a contractor or whatever, and you're done with that kind of stuff. You know, it's and I think what it does is actually it's a moment, and we're having this at a couple of boroughs at the moment, where what happens is you then make the opposition, the people who are, you know, fighting against this stuff, just look very isolated and silly. You know, you kicked up a massive fuss about this. We've got the video evidence of what was the issue was before, you know, cargo trikes, people stuck, wheelchairs stuck, etc. We've got, you know, we've got the evidence of what happened afterwards, and you're fear mongering.
Yeah, just on that, I've got to come in, and far be it from me to talk against evidence-based like decision making. That's what I live my life by. But there is like and it's an emotive on this about barriers and people's feeling of safety. And I think you've got to take that into account. If the barriers aren't there, or people have that fear that a moped rider or quad bikes or whatever the latest fear is will go down there, it might discourage people from using it. And that's like that's always a fear for councils and officers, particularly if you're pushing active travel. And you know, so there's more nuance to it, because we all want to say, and I'm with Sustrans all the way on this, and let's get rid of the things. But then you go, well, what if you've got to have it? How do you make it as accessible as possible? And sometimes you just have to have that latter conversation rather than the first. If the fear's built up to such an extent that like people will like say they won't use it, and it does get into that area. So I'm kind of with you, but then, well, we can't say like fear's an issue with cycling. We can't like apply it to other people in like in their local neighborhoods. And I think you've got to tackle those psychological issues as well as the physical ones. And you know, if there was a world where it was just evidence-based, then brilliant, but we're not in it. That's my comeback on that one, just to offer the other side of it, albeit I'm usually making Simon's point. Ruth, come on in.
Oh, hi. I think Pascal's left. It would really be interesting to ask for the Dutch perspective on this, because there are little or no barriers there. And I think I've mentioned it before that the cycle route from Harrogate to Ripley has no barriers. They're there, ready to be put in if there's a problem. And according to my brother-in-law who helped set it up, if there is a problem, they put them closed for a bit, then they monitor it, and then they open them up again. So it's totally, it is accessible. So maybe we could invite Pascal to let us know how it works over the channel.
Yeah, I spoke to someone once who had like the kind of A-frame barriers, but he put a kind of hinge in it so you could wind in them and then pull them back down like a.
Yeah, no, but that depends on, sorry, that depends. But yes, those are the ones they've got in Harrogate, but they are set open. If you're saying that someone in a wheelchair has got to try and manage it for themselves, well, that's not right, and that's not fair.
No, I'm saying if there's a big issue and quad bikes are bombing down there for a week, then you go and put it into its non-equality format. Then you go, don't worry, it's gone now, back open up. So having that kind of like maybe that's a step between like resolving the fear and saying, look, we'll put this in so we can change it, and it's easily adjustable should that situation arise. I remember when we were doing Quiet Way 1 and we put the double dips to slow cyclists down so we could open up like a filter, and it was like a real marginal benefit of these ones. It's really like a motorbike deterrent, but like it helped us like get the route through and appease the local people and address their fears. So there's a lot to be said for those kind of approaches as well. Yeah. Oh, good. Yeah, we're interested. Yeah, so Pascal's gone. He's gone back to Holland, but I'm sure we'll get him back again. He's quite interesting. And I see that Wendy's gone as well now. And we're winding towards the end of like the accessibility debate. What I thought might be interesting to kill in the last 5 minutes before I let Ruth do last words is future things we could talk about. I've still got the list. Remember when I was asking you to go through those infrastructure ones? So I was going to do one on cycle streets, and I was also going to do like markings at side roads. This is all from my camp of the infrastructure stuff in there, and I'd really like to do a real dissection of the Welsh Active Travel Guidance and some of the, because I think there's some issues in there. Well, there's a few little tweaks I made. It's overall good, but there's some things in there that I think need a little bit of a debate as well. So I'm hoping to prod Phil and maybe Ranty to jump in on that as well. Want to go through that? So just in these last bit, has anybody got anything that they'd like us to discuss or a topic that they'd want to reach? I can see some hands going up now, and I'll go to Mark because Mark always gives me a brilliant idea. Mark Strong.
Thanks. So we're doing lots of stuff in Thurrock, where there are, like in a lot of places, lots and lots of new developments. And I think one of the issues, maybe we've talked about this in the past, I can't remember, but interfacing between new development areas where, you know, universally they're almost, you know, lots of lovely things on the master planning. And by the time it actually gets to be built, there's lots of shared use pavements everywhere if we're lucky. So it's really trying to get how we can get into that, get practical, proper details, not master plan ideas, but how we can get developments, new housing developments, to actually be on the ground what we want them to see.
No, that's a good one. And I've noticed actually that Pascal is still here. So while he's here, well, let's ask him. Pascal, so we're talking about access control barriers and the stuff we do to deter motorbikes and quad bikes from using paths, and how they can like disrupt like people in like non-standard bikes as well. It's a real hot issue, like a control barrier, because most of our paths in the UK have got horrific barriers that you have to squeeze through or lift your bike over or push underneath and watch your head. So just how do you tackle that issue in the great place that is the Netherlands? That's my question to you, Pascal.
Oh my God, I must admit, I'm not a consultant. I do not plan. I don't know how to make a cycle path. Are you silly? But I do know what the Netherlands do. And basically, you want to block certain paths from cars because they can't get in. And that's why you put a pole there. And that's what blocks people with a physical disability and a wheelchair, or people with cargo bike as well. I just made a very highly innovative tool that I hope will one day be implemented in the Netherlands. It is a threat, a psychological barrier, and a punishment tool in one. It's an empty box, and you buy 100 of them in the city, and you hang 100 boxes, but you only buy 10 cameras that can fine you. And so everywhere you need to control situations, you put that camera in that specific box, and people understand that they get a fine. And if you then swap them so that people don't know where they are, then they will be very preventative, and you do not have to block with poles or with barriers. And I do admit it is highly innovative, so you may sort of get a little headache of it. But if you can get it going, then it would be lovely.
Yeah, it's an interesting one. Like I was involved when we were rolling out the congestion charge, and we had people in my team that were involved in it, and we didn't have all the cameras up and running. I shouldn't say this, but I will anyway. So we just sent people out to random spots to write down number plates. So we did it in the old day, but you didn't know where we were going to turn up. So it's that fear, and that was enough to get the compliance absolutely through the roof before we had the technology there. So yeah, bit cheeky, but it's always cheeky from Pascal. I'll bring Brent.
There's one more suggestion I put in the chat. I made like 50 videos of cycling in Amsterdam. That's 360-degree videos, so you determine where you look. I have not edited, I do not comment, so you have your own cycle tour. And it's on all kinds of issues, from bridges to cycle paths, etc.
Yeah, they're absolutely brilliant, those videos. In fact, you inspired me, and I managed to persuade John to let me get a 360 camera so I can do some British ones. But it's amazing if you've never used that. Have a look at the curve there, look around there, shift your phone, grab the mouse. So definitely give that link a go. Okay, I'll bring in Brenda now, and we'll the last few questions.
Yeah. Oh no, thanks, Brian. Great session today as usual. I was just you asked for suggestions for future topics. So I was wondering whether the London Parklets campaign could have a short session, because you've got an action plan that we want to promote.
You can have a long session. I'm always happy to hear from you, Brenda. Like, just let me know whenever you want to talk. But
okay, you tell me when you can fit me, where you can fit us in.
Next week.
Sure, next week.
There we go. That sounds good, doesn't it? Yeah, we've got like a Camden cycling campaign in next week as well. So talk through some
Yeah,
problems. So
sure.
that should be really good. All right, who's next? Shane.
No, sorry. Next week I'm
Oh,
actually presenting to Stratford-on-Avon on parklets, to their council on parklets.
Oh,
So
well, just let me know whenever you can do.
Okay, okay.
We'll always
Yeah,
find time for you.
I'll send you an email. Thank you, Brian. Yeah. Okay.
Shane, what's happening?
Hi, Brian. Am I audible?
Yeah.
Yeah. Just on the Dutch thing, what people often forget is that most Dutch cycle paths are open to mopeds of a certain size and speed. So people on motorized two-wheelers mixing on cycle paths is part of the package. Now, it's unpopular if you've asked the the cyclists, but that's part of the package with the Dutch cycle path system, is that you have a certain level of motorized use. But
we'll be civilized. You definitely press Ruth's button there.
Okay.
Go on.
People don't like it, but it is a fact that the whole system was designed for many years for both mopeds and bicycles. That is a fact on the ground, which is why you don't find the access barriers.
Yeah, I've noticed that as well. Go on then, Ruth. We'll let you jump in.
I'm really sorry, but
Shane.
they've just banned it. Sorry, Shane, but
Yeah.
my partner is Dutch, and they have just banned bromfietsers from cycle paths. They brought in a law last year or the year before that if you were going at more than 30k, you had to wear a helmet. So obviously bromfietser riders don't want to do that. And if you needed to wear a helmet, you couldn't be on the cycle path. They've now just introducing where you cannot use them on the cycle paths. That's from him, and he lives there.
Yeah, but this is why they don't have the access barriers, is because they were permitted. And
Yes, I know, but they're not now.
Yeah, but we're talking about the access barriers, right?
Yeah.
So
all good.
Sorry.
That's interesting to know. I always thought the Dutch had a very libertarian view of this one. Well, if it's there and they can use it, why not? Be forgiving. But anyway, maybe not. Okay.
That limitation is also applying to new high-performance e-bikes as well. So if your 250-watt e-bikes are fine, but the 500 and 750-watt bikes capable of more than assist over 30 kilometers an hour, they're also considered as mopeds and now banned from many cycle routes. And there's a couple of major issues in Utrecht about that at the moment.
Yeah, speed pedelecs are a big talking point whenever I'm talking to my European colleagues there. Simon, coming in?
Yeah, just I think Scott's point in the chat, but I've added as well. I'd love to see a future thing on town versus county and kind of across county lines and things like that. That seems, from a Londoner, whenever I talk to anyone outside London, that's pretty much the number one topic of issue is, what happens if your county wants to do something and your town doesn't, or vice versa, or whatever.
Well, yeah, that is a real tough one, yeah. And I've had many conversations with Mark Strong on this, like people that live in towns, in counties, in regions and districts. Yeah, that's a juicy one. I'm not sure how we'll get to the bottom of that one, but yes, politics is changing, isn't it?
Maybe we ought
regions are the answers.
We ought to invite the mayor of one of the combined authorities up here in the northeast to talk about it.
Well, Stephen Joseph is talking about it. He's researching it. Ex-chief executive, whatever it's called, Transport 2000 or Campaign for Better Transport. He's now professor at Hertfordshire University. And I think that's one of the research topics that he's actually working on. So maybe we'll get Stephen on to talk about it.
Oh yeah, see if you can get him. That sounds.
Well, I'm in discussion with him about this issue, because in Hertfordshire it's a particular thing. So he would be great.
And speaking from Hertfordshire,
oh yes, we're in Hertfordshire.
We've got a combined authority up here in the northeast, which includes the suburban area of North Tyneside, and then abuts Newcastle City Council. There's a combined authority with the mayor. Those issues exist completely when there are two different sets of planning authorities, two different sets of priorities. They wouldn't combine with South Tyneside to form a proper coordinated view across North and South Tyneside. So we should get these people in front of us and say, what are you doing about it, guys?
In a nice, friendly, open, informal, ideas with beer style way. That sounds good.
Yeah. I mean, again, going back to my earlier point about supporting these guys and saying, we can support you with arguments and reasons and technical support and everything else to get the kind of things that you're talking about get done, which were being blocked by local councillors because they haven't got a fucking clue what's going on.
All right, go on then, Dave. What are you going to say? Tell us this time. No, it's going to be good.
Can I do a quick share screen, Brian? Because I think there's something we might want to have a look at. That one.
Go on then. What am I saying?
This one.
Oh, it's a cycle parking video. It could have gone anywhere, that, couldn't it?
Well, these are the ones at Milton Keynes. These are the same ones at Sevenoaks that used to fall on people's heads. The slightest breath of wind, there's no detent that holds them. But also you get Ruth and smaller women saying they can't lift the things or they're installed badly. And Mark was testing the ones, Essex Mark, not Sussex Mark, was testing the ones out at Colchester, I think.
All right. Yeah, no, okay. Well, I'm going to take that as a try and put it in the format to say, oh, let's talk about cycle parking again in a bit of detail. I think that
almost everybody said their worst case. You know, we all reporting what we've seen around the country.
All right, so that's the suggestion to have like a what have we seen? What have we seen? But okay, I get that. All right then.
I'll vote for that as well. There's some new cycle parking gone up in the Helix in Newcastle, which looks quite good, but I'm not quite sure yet. I'm not going to be to see it yet.
Let's do a share our cycle parking pics session. That's just about as deep geeky as we can get. I love it.
Robert's also got his new trains, Brian, and Metrolink are talking of bikes on the trams. And Robert's talking about the sort of south and north Tyneside, or Tees and Tyne, basically splitting. We also have this M62 Metro Mayors coordinating everything across the great band of the northern cities. Robert might object to that, but
Midlands, you mean the Midlands?
But you know, you have this swathe of red across the centre of the north, and if they can all start coordinating, you know, the Merseyrail, the trams in Sheffield, and Metrolink in Manchester. Leeds is the only place that hasn't got it, and then Manchester's got hire bikes. I think Leeds and West Yorkshire will probably get hire bikes very soon. So it's going to be a case of let's see how we fit bikes into all this transport planning in the metro areas.
Well, let's do that. Let's take that away, everybody. Like 1 week, we'll do shock and awe for Dave of showing our best cycle parking at stations pictures. We'll do it the whole day, and we'll talk about all the nuts and bolts and finishes. That sounds like something that. Let's hope it's a really hot day as well, and we're all baking when we do that one. That'll be good. I'm going to go over to Ruth now to give us the last word. Sorry, Dave, you can't get the last word. It's always Ruth. Even I shut up when Ruth gets going.
Thank you very much. Actually, I've got so much to say today. It's really difficult. But I was cycling in your neck of the woods, Brian, I think. Berkhamsted, is that Hertfordshire? So we cycled from Chiswick to Berkhamsted, and we've just been talking about crossing country lines, which of course is drug related, but we're talking about cycling. And it is a real problem going from one place to another. Until that's resolved, the decarbonisation plan won't work at all, because somehow all councils, all areas have got to be brought into line. And I remember Liron, when he did his talk about Rotterdam, if any of you remember, is that there was a consultation, the shops in Rotterdam said no, but the municipality said, sorry, for the greater good, we will impose this. And they've now removed miles and miles of roads. And it's improving all the time. It's fantastic. But the point about Berkhamsted, if any of you've been, but it's a typical country town where it's wall-to-wall, nose-to-tail traffic from beginning to end. And apparently they're talking about pedestrianising the middle of it. And I was talking to a woman in the street and she said, well, where will I park? And actually what the Dutch do is they have lots of places to park. They can be underground, they can be on the outside of the town, but they do provide parking such that people can park and ride. And as you know, I went to Oxford a couple of weeks ago and that was a bit of a disaster for cars, I think. So there just has to be a lot more money spent. 2 billion over 5 years, as I've said repeatedly, isn't enough. And if they really want us to get this modal shift, then it has to be cross-country lines, top down, have the same kind of transport team in every single county, borough, town. And I know I'm preaching to the converted, but it's what I keep saying over and over again. But the nicest final word, if I can, Brian, was as I parked my bike outside my flat today, having done a million chores by bike, was this amazing woman on something called a tracheodo. And she had 3 children on the back. One was 6 and the other 2 were 4, twins. And it was just divine. They were cycling around Chiswick, coming home from school. And I was able to have a really long chat with her. She was from New York and she couldn't understand why everyone else didn't cycle like she did. She was inspirational.